But again, if you truly are open to understanding what's going on, then you must know that for those of us who go through infertility and life happens, God forbid it happens to you, going through infertility and you have relationship problems, when you go through, it takes time, and it takes close to a year sometimes or more for many of us going through infertility. And so was the same for Khloe. And she has these embryos now. She, of course, implanted that embryo in November, way before this baby was revealed. So she by no means even knew any of this was happening. What was she supposed to do? The surrogate was carrying the child. She couldn't obviously tell people at that time. People don't say they have a surrogate early on. They usually say it later when the baby is about to be born. So we pray for this miracle baby, I guess, because this is really a miracle baby if you think about it, especially when it comes to infertility. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my channel. I got a bunch of new subscribers. Thank you for joining the family. And if you're new, please go ahead and subscribe. I started this YouTube channel to be able to share stories of infertility based out of my experience. You probably logged on and clicked on my video because either one of two things, right? Either you were just curious as to the explanation as to what happened with Khloe and Tristan, and you just want to kind of know the facts from this random person, me, aka, or you are one of my subscribers who already knows what's going on and are just curious to be a part of the conversation. Either way, I have my blessed mug, trying to digest the news, obviously, and you know, before you leave this video, you will know exactly what is going on. And it may not be as crazy as you think. If you are interested, stay tuned. This is really good. You know, hot chocolate. I stayed up contemplating this news, and I gotta tell you, it's really, really unfortunate. But the truth is, it's actually not as crazy as people think. So many of you may or may not know this, but Khloe is actually going through infertility. And like many women who go through infertility, Khloe actually went through this privately. But why we must support Khloe and why we must be talking about this is that Khloe has been sporadically a part of the conversation of normalizing what's happening in fertility. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. And I got my notes here. People magazine printed an article about Khloe's infertility in May 27th of 2021. And in this article, they actually had the Keeping Up with the Kardashians episode where Khloe talked about her infertility. Her diagnosis, you know, I always mention in my channel about understanding your diagnosis. And what had happened to Khloe is that she was very fortunate to be one of those women that was educated about infertility. And being older, being 38, she froze her eggs. But when it came to freezing her eggs, in order to preserve her fertility, they thawed the eggs, which is a natural part of this process. When you freeze your eggs, when it's time to use them, they thawed them, but none of them made it. And then what ended up happening was she had to go through the whole process again. In fact, Khloe Kardashian did go through 3 IVF cycles. And those of us who have gone through infertility can only empathize. The resilience it must take to go through cycle after cycle and it does not work is very painful. So that's the first part of her diagnosis. The second part of her diagnosis is Khloe also discovered, because she did her homework, and obviously she has very good doctors, that she's not actually able to carry a pregnancy. Now, there wasn't any proof that she had clotting factors such as natural killer cells or anything like that, or, you know, if it's age related, it can happen at that age. You know, Meghan Markle also had a miscarriage, you know, in her late 30s, I believe. miscarriages happen. But I think her doctors told her that she is high risk for carrying a pregnancy, which thank God they told her that, because can you imagine having an embryo during IVF, getting it put back in, you having a miscarriage, and then they actually find out why, because remember what happens is if in that process is they take a sample and then they're able to let you know what the condition is, how high risk you are. So in a nutshell, she had those two diagnoses that she was dealing with during her IVF journey. And I'll put an article so you can read about it, what People Magazine actually wrote in May 27th of 2021. Now that same year, in March of 2021, Khloe did a podcast with the Ellen daytime series podcast called Lady Parts. The host was Sarah Hyland, and the doctor who was there during the conversation was Dr. Sherry Ross. And I'll put in a link to that podcast there, because it's important that you kind of see that video of the podcast, because Khloe was actually, again, with Courtney, her sister, very candid about infertility and preserving your fertility, freezing your eggs and vice versa, so that you could have a baby. And this is very important because in that podcast in March of 2021, that is last year, Khloe Kardashian revealed that she already had made embryos with Tristan Thompson. So the babies, as we like to call them, M babies in the fertility community, were already made. And as you guys know, when you are successful in having embryos, you can actually, on day 5, you can get them frozen and tested. And the testing actually even already tells you the sex of the babies, if you would like to know, because a lot of people do PGTA testing to make sure that aneuploidy isn't there, especially people who had miscarriage, because the worst thing is to put back an embryo that you have not tested, only for it not to work out and for you to go through miscarriage and the possibility of a DNC. So there's a very high likelihood that Khloe got those embryos tested. So she already had her family predetermined and preset in March of 2021. So we do need to know the facts and be gracious to Khloe, because this is not a situation where, oh my gosh, she knew that this guy is like this and I'm having a baby with him a few months later. Because to a lot of people, they're thinking about this baby that Tristan had when he was unfaithful to her in December of 2021. And so they're thinking that this baby obviously came about around that time. They don't know that this was actually way back when Khloe had already predetermined this, way back. And by virtue of when they actually used the surrogate, because the surrogate now is expecting to give birth to the baby any day now, as TMZ reported last night, right? Any day now. That means that the transfer happened in early 2021. And that is, and I think they actually have a date when the transfer happened. It happened, and I apologize, it wasn't early 2021, it was later, around November of 2021, which is before the child was born that Tristan had with the woman that I guess he was sporadically dating. So it's really interesting when you see these facts, and especially if you go through infertility and have been on your journey for years, you can imagine the horror and the pain. And of course, people don't know, people don't understand, people don't get it, right? So if you're watching this video and you're new to infertility, I hope that little snippet of a timeline provides you some information. So finally, how does this all tie in together? Well, according to the facts of those who are fans of the show, who follow I Love Khloe from the Kardashian girls, and so he was pretty aware of this timeline in terms of how it was reported. What happened was, in February of 2019, Khloe and Tristan broke up. And then during the pandemic, many families spent time together, people were secluded. That was the year 2020. That was when Khloe and Tristan reconciled. And I believe, folks, that was also probably the time, because the relationship was turning on in a positive way. That was probably when Khloe started to TTC again. But as you guys know, during 2020, there was many clinics that were not TTCing. In fact, those that were TTCing were for women with advanced maternal age who obviously could not lose a year. But in 2020, they reconciled, and that's when they started talking about her going through additional egg retrievals so that she could have embryos that they could use to make a family. So it looks like what probably happened was during their reconciliation period, that is when Tristan cheated on her, probably around March, hence why the baby with the woman called Morley Nichols, baby born in December 2021. It was as a result of him cheating on Khloe around, I would say, that March of 2021. But again, if you truly are open to understanding what's going on, then you must know that for those of us who go through infertility, and life happens, God forbid, it happens to you, going through infertility and you have relationship problems. When you go through, it takes time, and it takes close to a year sometimes or more for many of us going through infertility. And so was the same for Khloe. And she has these embryos now. She, of course, implanted that embryo in November, way before this baby was revealed. So she by no means even knew any of this was happening. What was she supposed to do? The surrogate was carrying the child. She couldn't obviously tell people at that time. People don't say they have a surrogate early on. They usually say it later when the baby is about to be born. So we pray for this miracle baby, I guess, because this is really a miracle baby if you think about it, especially when it comes to infertility. But I think it's also the grace of knowing that probably Khloe did talk about having multiple children. She may have more embryos. People have embryos frozen, and they wait to get them transferred. But relationships are complicated. And so we in the fertility community stand with Khloe Kardashian. We support Khloe Kardashian. We empathize with Khloe Kardashian, and we know that she's not crazy. And Khloe, if you're watching this, know that we support you in the infertility community. We got immediately what was going on because many of us have also gone through this journey, and your diagnosis is very painful, and we we support you. And in this space we wish you grace, and we understand it's very complicated. Going through the IVF process with a partner can be difficult. IVF can break relationships. It takes a very tough couple to withstand what happens through this process. And when you have to do it publicly in terms of your relationship, it can even be really, really hard. So that is in essence what happened. So I know as you watch this, you may have questions or you may have thoughts. Maybe you may even want to give your support to Khloe and all those women who are hidden, going through struggles and trying to grow their families. I mean, this is a very real situation. So make sure that you share your thoughts in the comments below. And, it's, wow. I was thinking about it today, and I really do feel for Khloe. And I hope that you can too, and find grace. Thank you for watching. Until my next video, everybody, bye.